Story number 1. The Silent Hitchhiker. It was the kind of night truckers like me dreaded. Snow falling so thick it swallowed the road. Headlights barely cutting through the storm. The highway stretched empty for miles. Nothing but darkness and the occasional flicker of the dying streetlight. My hands gripped the wheel, stiff from the cold, my breath fogging up the windshield even with the heater blasting. I was already on edge, counting the hours until my next stop, when I saw her. She stood at the side of the road, motionless. No jacket, no hat, just a thin dress barely visible against the snow. Her long, dark hair hung limp, her face pale under the dim glow of my headlights. Something about her presence made my stomach tighten. No one in their right mind would be out in this weather, not dressed like that. But leaving someone stranded in a storm, that wasn't an option. I slowed to a stop, rolling down the window. "Need a ride?" I called out. She didn't answer. She just stepped forward, opened the passenger door, and climbed in without a sound. The moment she sat down, I felt it. A shift in the air, like the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. The heater was on full blast, but I could see my breath again. She closed the door gently, her fingers pale and stiff, as if she'd been standing in the cold for hours. "Where are you headed?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. No phone, no wallet, just this single, yellowed slip. I unfolded it, expecting an address, but all it said was, "Drive." A chill that had nothing to do with the weather crawled down my spine. I cleared my throat and put the truck in gear. "All right, guess we're heading forward." The road stretched on, silent, except for the hum of the engine. She didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't even shiver despite her thin dress. Every now and then I'd glance at her out of the corner of my eye. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her head slightly tilted down. I couldn't even hear her breathing. After a few miles, my unease turned into something worse. I checked the rearview mirror, and my grip on the wheel tightened. Her reflection wasn't there. I blinked, looked again. Nothing. The seat beside me was empty in the mirror. But when I turned my head, there she was, still, silent. My fingers twitched against the wheel. "You okay?" I asked, my voice tight. She didn't answer, didn't even blink, just sat there perfectly still. I reached for the radio, anything to break the suffocating silence. Static. I twisted the dial. More static. The station I'd been listening to 5 minutes ago was gone. The road stretched endlessly. No signs, no exits, just the storm swallowing everything outside. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was driving in circles. That no matter how far I went, I wasn't getting anywhere. Then I noticed the paper, the one she'd handed me. It was still on the dashboard, but now the word had changed. "Don't stop." My breath caught in my throat. My eyes flicked to the passenger seat. She hadn't moved, but I knew she was watching me. Even without turning her head, I felt it, the weight of her gaze pressing down on me. The temperature inside the truck dropped again, my fingers numb against the steering wheel. My headlights flickered, the snow outside swirling like hands reaching for the windshield. The road ahead looked different, wrong, like the trees weren't in the same places they had been before. Then she moved, not much, just a small tilt of her head, but it was enough to make my chest tighten, my pulse hammer against my ribs. Her mouth opened slightly, not to speak, not to breathe, just open, like she was about to say something, but changed her mind. A voice, distant and broken by static, whispered through the speakers. "She's not supposed to be there. I slammed on the brakes. For the first time, she reacted. Her head snapped toward me so fast, I almost expected to hear her neck crack. Her eyes, dull and lifeless before, were wide now. Black, hollow, too deep. A sharp inhale filled the cabin, but it wasn't from me. It was from her. The radio buzzed again. Drive. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. The truck was at a dead stop now, the snow piling up around us. The paper had changed again. Too late. The truck engine died. The lights flickered out. I was plunged into darkness. Something moved beside me. I couldn't see her, but I felt her. Closer now. The cold pressing against my skin. The whisper of fabric as she turned in her seat. A hand, ice cold, fragile, brushed my arm. I jerked away, fumbling for my keys, but my fingers wouldn't work. The cold had sunk into my bones, paralyzing me. Then she spoke, a voice like wind through dead trees, soft, distant, but right in my ear. You should have kept driving. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was behind the wheel, the truck still running. The highway stretching ahead. The storm had passed, the sky a dull gray. She was gone. The passenger seat was empty, but the paper remained, resting on the dashboard like it had never moved. I picked it up with trembling fingers. One final message, scrawled in jagged handwriting. See you next time. I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. Story number 2. The last stop. Diner. It was past midnight, and the snowstorm had swallowed the road whole. My wipers barely kept up, struggling against the thick white that piled up faster than I could blink. I had been driving for hours, my eyelids heavy, my hands stiff from gripping the wheel. There was no sign of life, just endless snow-covered trees, the hum of my tires, and the unsettling feeling that I was completely alone out here. Then I saw it, a glowing neon sign flickering through the storm. Last Stop Diner. Open 24 hours. Relief flooded my chest. I hadn't seen a gas station, a rest stop, or even a house for miles. I pulled into the small parking lot, the only car in sight. The diner sat there like a frozen relic, its lights warm against the suffocating white. I cut the engine, stepping out into the biting cold. The moment my boots hit the snow, the silence hit me like a weight. No wind, no distant highway noise. Atwar naksing alabel starstam. The of the door jingled as I stepped inside, and the hour tisar. Warmth wrapped around me like a blanket, and the place smelled like coffee and old grease. A classic 1950s-style diner, red leather booths, a long counter with stools, and a jukebox humming softly in the corner. At first glance, it looked normal. A few customers were scattered around, sitting eerily still. A woman in a tattered blue coat sat at the counter, stirring a cup of coffee that had gone cold. A man in a suit sat near the window, his fingers twitching on the table. An elderly couple occupied the booth closest to me, their food untouched. The waitress behind the counter looked up and smiled, but something about it was wrong. It was too perfect, too wide, like someone trying to act human. Her uniform was crisp, her name tag gleaming under the fluorescent light. "Cold night, huh?" she said, her voice oddly flat. "Take a seat anywhere, honey." I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed leave, but exhaustion won over. I slid into a booth near the door, forcing myself to relax. The menu was old and yellowed. The same classic diner fare. Burgers, fries, milkshakes. But something felt off. The pages were slightly damp, and the ink had bled in places like they hadn't been touched in years. The waitress appeared beside me so quickly, I nearly jumped. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee," I muttered, rubbing my hands together for warmth. She poured it without breaking eye contact. The coffee was thick, almost blacker than it should be. The steam curled upward in unnatural patterns. I took a hesitant sip. Bitter, metallic, wrong, and the man in the suit near the window turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see his face. His skin was pale, stretched too tight over his bones, his eyes glassy. He hadn't blinked once. The door creaked open and I turned, expecting another lost traveler. Instead, the wind howled through an empty doorway. No one had entered, but when I looked back, the woman at the counter was gone. A chill ran down my spine. The waitress was still there, still smiling, her eyes never leaving me. "You need anything else, sugar?" I swallowed hard, forcing a casual tone. "No, just passing through." Her smile widened. Aren't we all? Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I reached for my wallet, ready to throw some cash on the table and leave. But then I noticed the bill sitting next to my cup. It wasn't mine. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting strange and jagged. "Don't eat. Don't drink. Don't look at the clock." My pulse slammed against my ribs. My eyes flicked to the clock above the counter. 3:17 a.m. The second hand wasn't moving. I pushed back from the table, my legs trembling as I stood. The customers, all of them, turned their heads at the same time, like marionettes on invisible strings. Their movements were too precise, too synchronized. I took a step back. The jukebox crackled, and the old record skipping on the same note over and over. The lights flickered, just for a second, but when they came back on, the elderly couple's booth was empty. The door. I needed to get to the door. I forced myself to move, each step heavier than the last. The floor felt sticky, as if something thick clung to the soles of my boots. My breath came in shallow gasps. "Leaving so soon?" the waitress asked. Her voice was wrong now, layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. I didn't answer. My fingers wrapped around the handle of the door, and I pulled. It didn't budge. I yanked harder. "Didn't you read the sign, sugar?" she cooed. The neon outside flickered violently. "Last Stop Diner. Open 24 hours. The only thing that changed was the last part. Last Stop Diner. Open forever. Panic exploded in my chest. My hands were slick with sweat as I pounded on the glass. The storm outside was gone. No snow, no road, just blackness, an endless, swallowing void. A whisper slid past my ear. "You should sit back down." I spun around and she was inches from my face. Her eyes weren't human anymore, just gaping black holes, endless and consuming. The customers behind her grinned, their teeth jagged and wrong. The walls of the diner pulsed, breathing like something alive. The counter melted into the floor, the booths stretching upward like skeletal fingers. The air grew thick, suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. I had to move. I had to run. With everything in me, I lunged toward the window, throwing my weight into it. The glass shattered, and I fell forward into the snow. The real snow. The cold hit me like a punch, knocking the air from my lungs. I scrambled to my feet, panting, my truck still sitting in the lot, headlights still on. But when I turned back, the diner was gone. No building, no lights, just untouched snow and an empty road stretching into the darkness. I stood there, my heart hammering, my mind screaming that none of this made sense. The only proof that any of it had happened was the taste of that bitter, metallic coffee still lingering on my tongue. I climbed into my truck, locked the doors, and peeled out of that lot so fast my tires nearly spun out. I didn't stop driving for hours. When I finally dared to pull over at a gas station, the cashier gave me a strange look. "You all right, man?" he asked. I swallowed hard. Yeah, just a long night." He nodded, then paused, frowning. "Hey, weren't you just here?" The air left my lungs. "What?" He tapped the counter. "Came in an hour ago. Ordered a coffee. Sat right there." I turned, my eyes locking onto the booth near the window. My jacket was still draped over the chair. A cup of coffee sat on the table, steam curling from its surface. I stumbled backward. "No, I wasn't here." The cashier's brows furrowed. "Sure you were. Even left a note." My fingers trembled as I picked up the slip of paper. My own handwriting stared back at me. "Don't eat. Don't drink. Don't look at the clock. Story number 3, the girl in the snow." The snowstorm had swallowed everything. The road, the trees, even the sky. It was all just an endless blur of white. Our SUV crawled forward, the wipers barely keeping up with the thick flakes hammering against the windshield. We had been driving for hours, lost somewhere in the mountains after missing a turn. The GPS had given up long ago, showing nothing but a blank screen. The only thing keeping us from pure panic was the fact that we were together. Me, my girlfriend, Emily, and our 2 friends, Jason and Mark. "We should stop," Emily murmured, her voice tight. "It's getting worse." Jason, who was driving, sighed. "Stop where? There's nothing out here." Just as the words left his mouth, I saw her. A girl standing alone in the snow. She was barely visible through the storm, a small figure in a thin white dress, no jacket, no gloves, just long dark hair falling over her face and bare feet sinking into the snow. Emily gasped. "Oh my God, stop." Jason hit the brakes, and the SUV slid before coming to a shaky stop. The girl didn't move. She stood there, motionless, staring down at the ground. "What the hell is she doing out here?" Mark whispered. No one answered. The temperature inside the car suddenly felt suffocating, thick with something unspoken. "She's freezing," Emily said, already reaching for the door handle. Jason grabbed her arm. "Wait! This isn't right. We can't just leave her." I swallowed, staring at the girl. Something about her posture made my skin crawl. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't even moving. Emily shook Jason off and pushed the door open. A blast of icy wind rushed in, stealing the breath from my lungs. Before we could stop her, she was already running toward the girl. "Hey, are you okay?" Emily's voice was barely audible over the storm. The girl finally moved. Not much, just a slight tilt of her head. The kind of movement that sent a cold spike of fear through my gut. Emily reached her and hesitated. "Where are your parents?" Silence. I leaned forward, gripping the dashboard. "Emily, just..." The girl lifted her head. I felt the air in my lungs turn to ice. Her eyes weren't normal. They were black. Not like a person's pupils, just endless, soulless voids. And she was smiling. Emily took a step back. "Guys..." Then the girl moved. She didn't run. She didn't walk. One moment she was in front of Emily. The next she was standing closer to the car, inches from the passenger side window. Her breath didn't fog up the glass. Her skin was so pale it almost blended with the snow. Mark cursed under his breath. "Get back in the car. Now." Emily didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled back, slamming the door shut behind her. The girl just stood there, watching, smiling. Then she turned and walked. Not toward us, not toward any road. Just straight into the woods, disappearing into the swirling snow. The silence in the car was deafening. Jason was the first to break it. "We're getting the hell out of here." No one argued. The SUV lurched forward, tires skidding slightly before finding traction. I kept my eyes locked on the rearview mirror, watching as the girl's figure became smaller and smaller, until the storm swallowed her whole. We drove in silence for what felt like an eternity. No one spoke. No one even breathed too loudly. The only sound was the wind howling around us, pressing against the car like unseen hands. Then Emily whispered, "Her footprints." My stomach dropped. "What?" She turned slowly, her face pale. She walked away, but there weren't any footprints in the snow. A sickening wave of dread washed over me. I hadn't noticed before, but now that I thought about it, she was right. The SUV skidded slightly as Jason pressed the gas harder. "I don't care what that was, we're not stopping again." We all agreed, but the storm didn't let up. The road twisted and turned, and no matter how far we drove, there were no signs of civilization. Just trees. Just snow. Just the sinking feeling that we weren't supposed to be here. Then the car sputtered. Jason's hands tightened on the wheel. No, no, no." The engine coughed once, twice, then died. The headlights flickered, and just like that, we were plunged into darkness. Mark groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." Jason tried the ignition again. Nothing. Not even a click. Emily's breathing quickened. "This isn't happening." Then I saw it. Through the windshield, just barely visible in the storm. A cabin. "Look," I pointed. "Over there." It was small, barely more than a shack, but it had a chimney with faint smoke curling from the top. A sign of life. A chance to get out of this nightmare. Jason hesitated. "I don't know, man." "You have a better idea?" Mark snapped. Reluctantly, we bundled up and stepped out. The snow swallowed our feet immediately, making every step a struggle. The wind howled around us, carrying whispers that didn't belong to us. I forced myself to ignore it. The cabin door was slightly ajar. Warm light flickered from inside. We stepped in. At first it was normal. A fireplace crackled in the corner. A wooden table sat in the middle of the room. Plates set for 4. It smelled of wood smoke and something faintly sweet, like cinnamon. But then I saw them. Boot prints. 4 sets of them, leading from the door to the table, identical to the ones we had just made. A shiver ran through me. "Guys, look at the plates." Each one had a name carved into the wood. Jason, Emily, Mark. Mr. A door creaked open behind us. We turned, and she was there. The girl, standing in the doorway, her black eyes gleaming in the firelight. She smiled. "You made it." The door slammed shut. Story number 4. The train that arrived, empty. The train station was nearly deserted, swallowed in a suffocating hush beneath the falling snow. The storm had emptied the streets, and the platform lights flickered in the cold, barely illuminating the tracks beyond. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself, my breath curling into the frozen air. The last train home was already late, and I was the only one waiting. I checked my phone. No service, of course. The silence stretched, pressing in on me, and I started to feel it. That gnawing unease, that creeping sensation that I wasn't as alone as I thought. I scanned the platform. Empty. Just me in the snow. Then, in the distance, the faint hum of an approaching train. Oh, relief flooded me as the headlights cut through the darkness, growing brighter, the massive steel body roaring into the station. It pulled in slowly, wheels screeching against the frozen tracks. The doors slid open with a hiss. But no one got off. No passengers. No conductor. Just a train, waiting. A strange chill crawled up my spine, but I shook it off. Maybe the storm had delayed its previous stop. Maybe people were further back in the cars. I hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside. The doors shut behind me with a heavy finality. Inside, the train was silent, too silent. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, flickering every few seconds. The seats were empty, not a single sign of life. No newspapers left behind, no bags or forgotten scarves, just rows and rows of vacant seats stretching into the next carriage. I took a hesitant step forward, my boots echoing against the floor. Something about the air inside felt stale, like the space hadn't been touched in years. The train jerked forward, lurching into motion. I grabbed the nearest pole, steadying myself as it picked up speed. Snow streaked past the windows, but the storm had thickened. I could barely see the city outside, just shifting shadows and the occasional blur of a passing street lamp. I exhaled slowly. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe the train was just emptier than usual. Then I saw the first figure, a man, seated a few rows ahead, facing away from me. I hadn't noticed him when I got on. He was perfectly still, dressed in a dark suit, hands resting on his lap. "Excuse me," I called out. "Do you know why this train is empty?" No response. I swallowed and took a step closer. "Hey, can you hear me?" Still nothing. Something about the way he sat made my stomach twist. His posture was too stiff, too unnatural. I moved forward slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. Then the lights flickered, just for a second. When they came back on, the man was closer. Not by much, just a row ahead now. But I hadn't seen him move, hadn't heard a thing. The train rattled along the tracks, the world outside a blur of white. I took a shaky breath and stepped back. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the flickering lights were messing with my head. Then they flickered again, and he was closer, 2 rows away. My blood turned to ice. I turned and rushed toward the next carriage, my pulse slamming in my ears. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss, and I stepped through, slamming it shut behind me. The new carriage was identical to the last. Rows of empty seats, buzzing lights. The only difference was the faint sound of music, distant, like an old radio playing from somewhere deeper inside. I kept moving, heart pounding. I just needed to find the conductor, a sign of life, something to prove that I wasn't losing my mind. The next carriage was the same, and the next. But then I saw it. A woman, seated near the far end. She was facing me, her face obscured by the flickering lights, her head tilted slightly, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders. I exhaled in relief, hurrying forward. "Hey, excuse me, do you..." The train lights went out completely. Total darkness swallowed me. The air turned frigid. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps as my fingers trembled against the cold metal pole. Then the lights flickered back. The woman was right in front of me. I staggered back, my scream catching in my throat. Her face was pale, hollow. Her lips curled in a smile, but her eyes, black, empty voids, never blinked. The train screeched violently, throwing me forward. The world outside the windows blurred, but it wasn't the city anymore. The streets were gone. The streetlights, the buildings. All I saw was snow. Endless, stretching snow, rolling in every direction, swallowing the train whole. I turned, lunging for the door, slamming my hands against the metal. The train wasn't stopping. The emergency brake didn't work. I spun back. The woman was gone. But the man in the suit was standing in the aisle, now. His hands were wrong. Too long, too many fingers, twitching at his sides. His head cocked at an unnatural angle. And then, in the silence, the radio music crackled louder. A voice, soft, distant, whispering through the speakers. You shouldn't have boarded. The train surged forward faster, the windows warping as if the outside world was bending in on itself. My body felt heavy, like something was pulling me down, dragging me deeper into whatever place this was. I clenched my fists. No, I wasn't going to be part of this. With everything in me, I threw myself at the emergency door, slamming it open. The freezing wind howled against my skin as I took one last breath and jumped. Darkness. I woke up on the platform, snow covering my clothes, the cold burning my skin. The train was gone. No tracks disturbed the snow, no sign it had ever been there. I stumbled to my feet, gasping, shaking, my mind screaming at train me to make sense of it. But before I could, I heard it, a distant hum, the sound of a train approaching. And this time, the platform wasn't empty. The man in the suit was standing at the edge, waiting. Story number 5. The plow driver's last route. The storm had swallowed the town whole. The snow piled high, turning streets into endless white tunnels, erasing sidewalks, burying parked cars, and making the world feel small and suffocating. It was the kind of night only a fool would be out in. And unfortunately, that fool was me. Plowing roads in the dead of night was a lonely job. But this storm, this was different. Something about it felt wrong. The snow wasn't just falling. It was pressing, like it was trying to bury something. Or maybe trying to keep something in. I was halfway through my last route when I saw him. A man standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, tires skidding on the ice. The headlights cut through the swirling snow, casting long shadows. He was dressed in nothing but thin pajamas, his bare feet sinking into the snow. No jacket, no hat, just standing there like the cold didn't touch him. I rolled down the window, the freezing wind slapping me in the face. "Hey, you okay?" He didn't answer. His head was tilted slightly like he was listening to something. A deep unease settled in my gut. I reached for the radio. "Dispatch, I got a guy out here. No shoes, no coat. Looks like he's in shock or something. We need a unit sent out." Static. I frowned, adjusting the dial. "Dispatch, you copy?" More static. Then a whisper. Just a faint, "Breathy, don't stop." I yanked my hand back like I'd been burned. The man moved. Not walked. Just shifted. 1 second he was 20 feet away. The next he was standing right at my window. I didn't see him move. Didn't hear a step. Just there. Up close, his skin was pale, almost blue. His lips cracked from the cold. His eyes, God, his eyes, they were too dark, too deep. He leaned down, so close I could feel the icy air coming off him. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, that wasn't human, he whispered, "Don't look behind you." Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't want to. But the moment someone tells you not to look, you do. My breath froze in my throat. In my side mirror, there were footprints, leading up to my truck. But not from him. From something else. Something still standing there. I couldn't see it. Only the tracks. Deep, pressed into the snow, circling my truck, as if something had been waiting, watching. The man's lips curled into something that was almost a smile. I slammed my foot on the gas. The plow roared forward, the man vanishing into the storm like he had never been there. The road ahead blurred into a tunnel of white, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out. But the footprints, they didn't stop. They didn't fade. They kept appearing one by one, following me. My hands were shaking, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I could hear something now, beneath the hum of the engine, a whisper crawling into my ears, slithering into my brain. The radio crackled again, a voice distant and broken. "Turn back!" I slammed the dial off, my pulse a hammer against my ribs. The town was ahead. I could see the faint glow of streetlights fighting against the storm. Just a few more miles. Then my headlights flickered. And for half a second I saw it. A shape, running on all fours. Too fast, just at the edges of my vision. Its limbs, too long. Its movement, too unnatural. The lights flickered again, and it was gone. But the footprints, they were right outside my door now. I wasn't alone in the cab anymore. The air turned sharp, the temperature plummeting in an instant. My breath curled in front of me, thick and white. Something exhaled behind me. I didn't turn, didn't blink, didn't breathe. A hand, ice cold, too many fingers, brushed against my shoulder. My vision blurred. Then, a horn, loud, close. I gasped, snapping back into reality. The plow was in the middle of town. The diner, the gas station. I was back. The footprints, gone. The whispers, gone. The thing behind me, I didn't check. I threw the truck into park, shaking so bad I could barely move. My radio crackled one last time. A voice, software amused. "See you next storm." I haven't worked a night shift since. Story number 6. Room for one more. The snowstorm had turned vicious by the time I reached the Airbnb. The road leading up the mountain had been barely visible, my car's headlights struggling against the thick white curtain of snow. My phone's GPS had lost service miles ago, leaving me relying on a screenshot of the host's instructions. I was supposed to be here alone, a quiet winter retreat. Just me, the snow, and silence. The cabin was small but looked cozy enough. A single-story structure with wooden walls, a pitched roof buried under layers of snow, and a small porch light flickering against the storm. I killed the engine, grabbed my bag, and hurried inside, the cold biting at my skin. The interior was exactly as pictured, rustic but comfortable. A fireplace crackled warmly, as if it had been burning all evening, even though no one was supposed to be here before me. A couch sat in the center, a small dining table near the kitchen, and a single bed tucked into the corner. I exhaled, shaking the cold from my body, already feeling the tension ease from my shoulders. Then I saw it. A second bed. I frowned. That wasn't in the listing. There was only supposed to be one. But there it was, neatly made, positioned against the opposite wall, just a few feet from mine. The covers were tucked perfectly, the pillows fluffed, as if expecting someone. A strange chill crept up my spine. I reached for my phone to check the listing again, but of course, no service. Maybe the host had just forgotten to mention it. Maybe they left it for emergencies. I shook off the unease and set my bag down. It was just a bed. Nothing to be weirded out about. The first few hours passed normally. I made dinner, sat by the fire, read a little. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling against the cabin walls. Every now and then, the power flickered, but it held steady. Then, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed something strange. The second bed. It wasn't made anymore. The sheets were slightly rumpled, the pillows dented like someone had just laid there. I froze, my heartbeat stuttering. I was alone. No one had been in here but me. My breath came shallow as I forced myself to approach it. I placed a hand on the sheets. Cold. Not just cold, freezing. Like someone had been lying there moments ago, but they hadn't been warm. A sound. Software subtle. Breathing. I turned sharply. The room was still. Empty. But I could hear it. Slow, raspy breaths coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I took a step back. My foot hitting something on the floor. A piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The ink was smudged, the handwriting erratic. Do not sleep in the bed. A loud thud made me jump. The second bed. It moved. Just an inch, just enough to scrape against the wooden floor. My body locked up. My breath came in sharp gasps. The air in the room had dropped by at least 10 degrees, the warmth from the fire feeling distant. Then I saw them. Indentations on the mattress, like someone was sitting there. I bolted. I grabbed my keys, my coat, barely even registering that my bag was still inside. My only thought was to get out. I yanked the door open and stumbled into the snow, the wind whipping against my skin. My car. I had to get to my car. But then I stopped. Footprints, leading away from the cabin. Not mine, not fresh. They had been there before I arrived. The snow continued to fall, the storm swallowing everything around me. I turned, my breath shaking, and looked back at the cabin. The second bed, it was now against the window, and something was standing behind the glass, watching me. I ran. I don't remember driving back down the mountain. Don't remember how I made it through the storm. But I know one thing. The Airbnb listing is gone, like it never existed. Story number 7. The man frozen in the ice. The lake had frozen over weeks ago, a thick sheet of ice stretching endlessly under the heavy snowfall. The town was silent this time of year, buried in white, the tourists long gone. It was just me and Daniel, two locals too restless to sit inside, deciding to hike out to the lake despite the warnings. The storm was picking up, but we didn't care. We were young, stupid, and too used to the cold to be afraid of it. We reached the lake by late afternoon. Surface was eerily smooth, untouched, except for a few scattered animal tracks leading toward the tree line. Daniel grinned, kicking at the snow piled along the edge. Think it's solid? I stepped forward, testing the ice with my boot. Yeah, feels strong. He took that as an invitation, running out a few feet, his laughter echoing through the quiet. I hesitated before following, my steps cautious, the sound of our movements sharp against the stillness. The lake felt different this year, too quiet, too heavy. Then I saw it, a dark shape beneath the ice. At first I thought it was a shadow, maybe a rock, a trick of the light. But as we moved closer, the details sharpened. A face, frozen beneath the surface. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. Daniel let out a sharp curse, kneeling down. The ice was thick, clouded in some places, but clear enough that we could see him. A man trapped beneath us. His skin was pale, lips slightly parted, arms outstretched as if he had been reaching for the surface when he froze. My stomach twisted. How the hell did he get down there? Daniel knocked on the ice, his voice uneasy. It's too thick. No way he fell in recently. He was right. The lake had frozen solid before winter even hit its peak. If the man had fallen through, the ice would have cracked, left a hole. But there was nothing, just him, perfectly preserved, staring upward with hollow, glassy eyes. A sudden gust of wind howled through the trees, rattling the branches. The temperature seemed to drop all at once, the cold biting through my jacket. I shivered, stepping back, suddenly desperate to be anywhere but here. Daniel exhaled sharply. We need to tell someone. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. But as we turned to leave, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. The man's hand. It had moved. I froze. Did you see that? Daniel's brow furrowed. What? I pointed, my heart slamming against my ribs. His hand. I swear to God it. Before I could finish, the ice beneath us groaned. A deep, awful sound. Like something shifting beneath the surface. Daniel grabbed my arm. Let's go. Now. We ran, our boots slipping against the ice as we bolted for the shore. My lungs burned, my mind screaming at me not to look back. But I did, and I wished I hadn't. The man in the ice was no longer still. His face, once frozen in an expression of silent horror, was watching me. His eyes, dark, sunken, unnatural, locked onto mine. Then his lips moved. Lips. Story. Number 6. Room for one more. The snowstorm had turned vicious by the time I reached the Airbnb. The road leading up the mountain had been barely visible, my car's headlights struggling against the thick white curtain of snow. My phone's GPS had lost service miles ago, leaving me relying on a screenshot of the host's instructions. I was supposed to be here alone, a quiet winter retreat. Just me, the snow, and silence. The cabin was small but looked cozy enough. A single-story structure with wooden walls, a pitched roof buried under layers of snow, and a small porch light flickering against the storm. I killed the engine, grabbed my bag, and hurried inside, the cold biting at my skin. The interior was exactly as pictured, rustic but comfortable. A fireplace crackled warmly, as if it had been burning all evening, even though no one was supposed to be here before me. A couch sat in the center, a small dining table near the kitchen, and a single bed tucked into the corner. I exhaled, shaking the cold from my body, already feeling the tension ease from my shoulders. Then I saw it. A second bed. I frowned. That wasn't in the listing. There was only supposed to be one. But there it was, neatly made, positioned against the opposite wall, just a few feet from mine. The covers were tucked perfectly, the pillows fluffed, as if expecting someone. A strange chill crept up my spine. I reached for my phone to check the listing again, but of course, no service. Maybe the host had just forgotten to mention it. Maybe they left it for emergencies. I shook off the unease and set my bag down. It was just a bed. Nothing to be weirded out about. The first few hours passed normally. I made dinner, sat by the fire, read a little. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling against the cabin walls. Every now and then, the power flickered, but it held steady. Then, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed something strange. The second bed. It wasn't made anymore. The sheets were slightly rumpled, the pillows dented like someone had just laid there. I froze, my heartbeat stuttering. I was alone. No one had been in here but me. My breath came shallow as I forced myself to approach it. I placed a hand on the sheets. Cold. Not just cold, freezing. Like someone had been lying there moments ago, but they hadn't been warm. A sound. Software subtle. Breathing. I turned sharply. The room was still. Empty. But I could hear it. Slow, raspy breaths coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I took a step back. My foot hitting something on the floor. A piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The ink was smudged. The handwriting erratic. Do not sleep in the bed. A loud thud made me jump. The second bed. It moved. Just an inch. Just enough to scrape against the wooden floor. My body locked up. My breath came in sharp gasps. The air in the room had dropped by at least 10 degrees, the warmth from the fire feeling distant. I opened it. It was dark, blurry. It took me a second to understand what I was looking at. My bedroom window. From the outside, and in the reflection of the glass, A face watching me. Story number 8. The cab that never stopped. The snow fell in thick, suffocating sheets, turning the city into a frozen graveyard. The streets were empty, the usual hum of nightlife buried beneath the weight of the storm. I had just finished a long shift at work. Exhausted, my fingers stiff from the cold, as I pulled out my phone to request a cab. My bus had stopped running hours ago, and there was no way I was walking home in this weather. The app took longer than usual to load. The signal was weak, flickering in and out. After a few moments, a notification popped up. Cab arriving in 2 minutes. No driver name, no license plate, just those 2 words. I hesitated. That was strange. Usually, the app gave a full profile, car details, photo, a rating. But I was too cold, too tired to care. As long as it got me home, I didn't care if it was a ghost driving. Headlights appeared through the swirling snow, a black car pulling up silently to the curb. I opened the door and slid into the back seat, rubbing my hands together for warmth. "Thanks for coming," I muttered. The driver didn't respond. The car smelled strange. Not bad, but off. A mix of something metallic and something old, like the inside of a forgotten basement. The seats were leather, cold against my skin. The partition between me and the driver was tinted, making it impossible to see him clearly. I checked my phone. No signal. The map wasn't updating. The car eased forward, sliding through the snow-covered streets in eerie silence. I glanced outside, recognizing the buildings as we passed. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal, until I realized something was wrong. We weren't stopping at red lights. The first time, I thought maybe the driver hadn't noticed. The roads were nearly empty after all, but then we passed another light and another. "Hey," I said, leaning forward. "I think you..." The driver's head tilted slightly, but he still didn't speak. A cold ripple crawled up my spine. I pulled up the app to check my destination, but the route was wrong. We weren't going toward my apartment. We weren't even in the right part of town anymore. The streets outside looked unfamiliar. Narrow, winding, flanked by tall, skeletal trees that loomed against the snowfall. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice tighter. "Now?" The driver didn't answer. I swallowed hard, my hands curled into fists against my lap. "Listen, I think you took a wrong turn. You can just pull over and I'll..." The lock clicked. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed the door handle and yanked. Nothing. The doors were locked from the inside. The driver's hands gripped the wheel, fingers too long, too pale against the black leather. His head tilted again, just slightly, like he was listening. "Let out." Demanded, my voice shaking now. "Let me out, or I swear." The car sped up. The buildings had disappeared. There were no more streetlights, no signs, just an endless stretch of road, disappearing into the storm. The snow outside was falling harder now, swallowing everything, blurring the world into an endless white void. I slammed my fist against the partition. "What the hell is this? Let me out!" Finally, the driver moved. His head turned slow and unnatural, like a puppet on rusted strings. His face was reflected in the rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. He had no eyes, no mouth, no face, just smooth, pale skin stretched too tightly over his skull. The car lurched forward. The speedometer needle shot up, the world outside turning into a blur. I pounded on the door, my heart beat a frantic drumbeat in my chest. Then, the radio crackled to life. A voice, distorted and broken by static, whispered through the speakers. "You shouldn't have gotten in," I gasped. pressing myself against the seat. The voice was layered, like 100 voices speaking at once, crawling under my skin, wrapping around my lungs. The road ahead was gone. No more trees, no more sky, just darkness, stretching out forever. I screamed, kicking at the door, the window, anything to get out. The car kept moving faster, deeper into the abyss. Then, suddenly, silence. The car had stopped. I was shaking so hard I could barely move. My fingers fumbled with the handle. This time, it opened. I stumbled out into the snow, gasping, the cold biting into my skin like teeth. My vision swam, my head spinning. I looked around. I was standing in front of my apartment building. The street was quiet, normal. The snow still falling gently. The cab was gone. No tire tracks, no headlights disappearing down the road, just gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification. Your ride has been completed. Rate your driver. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow, my hands numb. The driver's name was blank, and underneath it, where the rating should have been, was just one message. See you next time. Story number 9. They keep knocking. The first time it happened, I convinced myself it was the wind. The storm outside was relentless, the kind of snowfall that buried entire roads and turned small towns into ghostly white wastelands. My new place, a rundown roadside motel long abandoned before I bought it, sat on the edge of nowhere. I had taken over with plans to fix it up, make it livable again. It wasn't much, but it was cheap, and after what I'd been through the past year, solitude seemed like a blessing. That first night, as I sat by the dim glow of a single lamp, sipping whiskey to warm the cold in my bones, I heard it. A knock. Not loud, not urgent, just a single deliberate tap against my window. I froze, the glass fogging slightly from my breath. The wind outside howled, rattling the trees, the old wooden beams groaning under the weight of the storm. Probably a branch, I thought, or maybe ice shifting. I ignored it. Then it happened again. A slow, measured knock. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay calm. The motel was miles from the nearest house, and with the roads buried under snow, no one should be out here. I stood, my pulse hammering in my ears, and moved toward the window. The glass was dark, reflecting only my own pale face. I squinted, trying to see beyond the frost, into the swirling white. Nothing. I exhaled and shook my head. Just my imagination. But then, just as I turned away, knock. This time it was at the front door. My stomach twisted. I crept toward the door, every instinct screaming at me not to open it. I pressed my ear against the wood, listening. Nothing but the storm outside. Seconds passed, then minutes. I unlocked the door and cracked it open, just an inch. The porch was empty. Snow stretched untouched in every direction. No footprints, no sign that anyone had been there. I shut the door, locked it, and told myself it was just my nerves. But I didn't sleep that night. The next day, the knocking started earlier. At exactly 3 p.m., a single knock at the back window. I was in the middle of unpacking, trying to distract myself from the gnawing unease that had settled in my gut. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I turned slowly. The window was small, covered in a layer of frost, and this time there was something outside. A shape, just a dark silhouette, standing completely still. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't see details. No face, no movement, just an outline, barely visible through the snow. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed the local sheriff's office. No signal. Of course. I stepped back, my heart thudding. Who's there? No response. The shape didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the knocking started again. Not at the window this time. Behind me, at the front door. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my footing. The knocking was louder now, more forceful, rhythmic. I backed away, every hair on my body standing on end. Then, silence. The only sound was the storm, the wind howling through the trees. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I waited. After what felt like hours, I crept toward the front door. My fingers trembled as I reached for the knob. I hesitated. Then, in a single motion, I swung the door open. Nothing, just the empty, snow-covered porch. But this time, there were footprints leading up to the door, and none leading away. My stomach lurched. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and shoved a chair against the handle for good measure. That night, I sat in the corner of the room, staring at the door, waiting. At exactly 3 a.m., the knocking returned. Soft at first, then harder. Closer. It moved. From the front door to the window, then the back door, then the bathroom. It was circling the motel. I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. Wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But then the whispering started. A low, guttural sound, barely audible over the storm. Words I couldn't understand, voices layered on top of one another. Then, clear as day, one voice rose above the others. "Let us in." My body went rigid. I forced myself to look up. The shadows outside my window had grown. Not one, not two, dozens. Standing, watching, waiting. My breath came in sharp gasps. I grabbed my keys, my bag, anything I could reach. I had to get out. I moved toward the door, but before I could touch it, the knocking stopped. The voices went silent. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the window. The shapes were gone. The snow was untouched, like nothing had ever been there. I didn't sleep. At first light, I packed my things and left. I didn't care if the storm hadn't cleared. I drove until the motel was nothing but a speck in my rearview mirror. I never went back. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind is just right, I still hear the knocking. Story number 10, the night bus. The last bus of the night pulled up to the stop, its headlights barely cutting through the thick snowfall. The city was nearly silent, buried under layers of ice. The streets empty, except for me. My breath curled in front of me, in the cold air, as I stepped forward, my boots crunching against the frozen pavement. The doors hissed open, and I climbed inside. The air was stale, thick, with the lingering scent of dust and something faintly metallic. The driver barely acknowledged me, just a slight nod, as I dropped my fare into the machine. His face was shadowed under his cap, his hands gripping the wheel too tightly. The bus was nearly empty. Just one other passenger seated near the back, a woman in a heavy coat, her long, dark hair falling over her face. She didn't look up as I moved past her. I took a seat near the middle, shaking the cold from my body, trying to ignore the unsettling silence, the usual hum of the city, sirens, distant chatter, the occasional honk, was gone. The only sound was the rhythmic hiss of the bus tires rolling over icy roads. I pulled out my phone. No service. Frowning, I glanced outside. The streets looked wrong. I knew this route. I took it almost every night. But now, as we passed the dimly lit buildings, something felt off. The storefronts looked older. The signs weren't in English anymore. The streetlights flickered, cast in long, twisted shadows across the snow. I leaned forward. "Hey, excuse me?" The driver didn't respond. I cleared my throat, speaking louder. Where are we? Nothing. His hands tightened on the wheel. A strange, creeping unease slithered up my spine. I turned to the woman at the back. Do you know what's going on? She didn't move, didn't even breathe. My heart pounded. I shifted in my seat, my fingers gripping the cold metal pole beside me. The bus continued its silent journey, moving deeper into streets I didn't recognize, and the lights flickered. For half a second, everything went dark. When they came back on, the woman was closer. Not by much. Just one row ahead. But she hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound. I swallowed hard. The air inside the bus had turned thick, heavy, like the pressure had changed. I glanced at the driver again. His head was tilted slightly now, just enough that I could see part of his face. His eyes weren't on the road. They were on me, a deep, suffocating cold wrapped around my chest. I shot to my feet. Stopped the bus. The driver didn't react. I reached for the cord, yanking it hard. The familiar ding echoed through the empty space, but the bus didn't slow. Didn't stop. I stumbled toward the front. Hey, I said stop the damn bus. Then the lights flickered again, and the woman was right behind me. I felt her breath on my neck, cold and sharp. I spun around, my pulse hammering, and finally saw her face, or what was left of it. Her skin was sunken, stretched too tight over her bones. Her mouth was open, lips cracked, her eyes black, endless, empty. The lights flickered again, and the seats were full. Every row, every seat. Passengers who hadn't been there before. Their faces wrong. Their eyes black holes staring at nothing. My scream caught in my throat. The bus was full, but it wasn't alive. The bodies sat, unmoving, like forgotten mannequins, heads tilted at unnatural angles. I stumbled backward, my body shaking. The doors. I had to get to the doors. I lunged for them, slamming my fists against the metal. Let me out. The driver finally spoke. You shouldn't have gotten on. His voice was hollow, not human. The bus lurched, the world outside blurring, the streets disappearing into nothing. The buildings, the lights, gone. Only snow remained, endless, stretching in every direction. The driver turned his head, fully now, his face no longer a shadow. There was nothing beneath his cap, no features, no mouth, no face. I screamed. The passengers stood up. The bus roared forward, faster, shaking, the windows warping, twisting, reflecting shapes that weren't mine. Then, silence. The bus had stopped. I gasped for air, my hands shaking violently as I turned toward the doors. They were open. I stumbled outside, falling into the snow, my body trembling so hard I thought I might shatter. The cold was brutal, searing through my clothes, but I didn't care. I turned, heart pounding, and the bus was gone. No tire tracks, no sound, just an empty street. A familiar street. My street. I was home. But as I stood there, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the bus app. Your ride has been completed. See you again soon. I never took the night bus again. Story number 11. The basement door that shouldn't exist. When I bought the house, I thought I had gotten a good deal. A little fixer-upper on the outskirts of town, buried under a thick blanket of snow, isolated enough that I wouldn't be bothered by neighbors. It was old, creaky, but had character. Something about it felt right. Until I noticed the door. It was in the hallway just past the kitchen, a heavy wooden door with a rusted handle locked tight. At first I assumed it was a storage space. Something the realtor had forgotten to mention. But as I explored the house, I found the real basement entrance. on the other side of the house. That door shouldn't have existed. I ran my fingers over the frame, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. No draft, no sounds, just dead air beyond it. Something about it made my skin crawl. That night, as the snowstorm raged outside, I sat by the fireplace, trying to shake the unease that had settled in my chest. The house groaned against the wind, the wooden beams stretching, shifting, like an old man waking from a long sleep. I convinced myself the door was nothing, just a quirk of an old house, until I heard the knocking. It was faint, distant, but unmistakable. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap. I froze, my fingers tightening around my glass. It was coming from the hallway, from behind the basement door. I hadn't opened it, hadn't even touched it. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I stood, forcing my legs to move. The hallway was darker than it should have been, the air colder. The door loomed at the end, its edges wrong, as if it hadn't been built, but had grown from the house itself. I swallowed hard and pressed my hand against the handle. It was ice cold. The knocking stopped. I yanked my hand back, breath coming in short gasps. Number, I wasn't doing this. Not at midnight. Not in a blizzard. I turned and went straight to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. That night, I barely slept. The wind screamed through the trees, the walls shuddering with every gust, and beneath it all, just barely audible, tap, tap, tap. The next morning, I convinced myself I had imagined it. Stress, maybe even a rat stuck in the walls. I grabbed my toolbox and marched to the door, determined to put an end to my own paranoia. The lock was rusted, the screws barely holding. It took some effort, but eventually I managed to pry it open. The door groaned, reluctant, as if something on the other side didn't want me to see. The air that rushed out was wrong. Stale, damp, thick, with something that smelled like whetstone and rot. My stomach twisted as I aimed my flashlight inside. The basement was not a basement. It stretched downward, a long, spiraling staircase disappearing into darkness. The walls weren't made of concrete, but rough, uneven stone like a cave carved into the earth. Cold air breathed against my skin, heavy and damp, like something waiting at the bottom. I should have closed it, should have left it alone. But something pulled me forward. Step by step, I descended. The walls narrowed as I went deeper, the steps worn and uneven. The deeper I went, the stronger the smell became. My flashlight flickered, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. Then I heard it, breathing, slow, deep, below me. I stopped, my whole body locked in place. My mind screamed, run, but my feet wouldn't move. Then, a whisper, a voice soft, curling around my ears like smoke. You're not supposed to be here. I turned and ran. The stairs blurred beneath my feet, my flashlight bouncing wildly as I scrambled upward. The air behind me shifted, something moving, something coming up the stairs. I reached the door and slammed it shut, locking it, shoving my weight against the wood. The house groaned, the walls shuddering as if the whole place had come alive. Then, silence. I stood there, gasping, waiting. No knocking, no whispers, just the wind howling outside. That night, I shoved a heavy dresser against the door. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called a contractor, asked him to come check the house. I didn't tell him what I found, just that I needed the basement door sealed shut. When he arrived, I led him to the hallway, but the door was gone. Not locked, not broken, just gone, as if it had never existed. The contractor gave me a strange look, but I didn't care. I nodded, thanked him, and told him I must have made a mistake. That night, I barely breathed as I walked past where the door used to be. Just an empty wall now. Smooth. Unmarked. But as I turned away, Tap, tap, tap from inside the wall. If you made it this far, congratulations. You survived the night for now. But tell me, have you ever experienced something strange? Something you couldn't explain? Share your horror stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a chilling tale. More terrifying stories are waiting for you. Go ahead and check out the videos appearing on your screen. You might just find one that keeps you up tonight. Stay safe. Don't open any doors that shouldn't exist.